I think that Naftali Bennet was a good prime minister. He was appointed prime minister under the worst possible circumstances, political circumstances. Couldn't be worse. The only way to form a coalition was to form a coalition which comprised of parties which were the extreme right-wing, as his party is, and a new hope of Gideon Sa'ar, and on the other hand, Meretz, and of course the Arab Islamic fundamentalist party. And if someone had any expectations that this party can create revolutions, I mean, it was inconceivable in the first place. It was a government that was established for one purpose only: to relieve Israel of the crazy atmosphere which has characterized the political life of our country in the last few years, and to create a new narrative, a narrative of tolerance, of cooperation, of less panicking, less hysteria. And I think that they achieved it. And this is largely a result of the good nature and the responsibility and the manners which were exercised by Naftali Bennet. So he deserves a great praise. And also, it has changed the politics of Israel forever. It must be understood. From now on, the Arab population of Israel will be in the center of the decision-making process that will determine the priorities, the identity, and the fate of the state of Israel. And no more boycott of 20% of the Israeli population. The Arabs proved in this cabinet, not just a regular Arab party, an Islamic radical party, that they can be counted on, that they are serious, they are certainly loyal to the state of Israel. They didn't have to prove it. By the very fact that they were elected to the Israeli Knesset in a due democratic process, they proved that they are loyal to our system and to our principles. And they proved it in the kind of cooperation which they established with other parties during the last year. So there was a change.
Right.
And it is something that will continue to impact the political life of the state of Israel for many years to come.
Right, hugely important precedent. Now, Yair Lapid enters the office suddenly, a little unexpectedly, as you did, though you had considerably more political experience. What do you have to say to Yair Lapid, who even as an interim prime minister has some big challenges ahead of him, including just in a couple of weeks, has to function in that role, greeting the President of the United States?
I don't have any doubts about his ability to greet the President of the United States and to go and speak to the President of France. I mean, he's been around long enough in order to be able to do this. Of course, the main ultimate test of the Prime Minister is his ability to take tough decisions sometimes. And every Prime Minister has to deal with it. And the problem or the dilemma or the misfortune in a way of Lapid is that at the day that he became Prime Minister, an election campaign started. So he didn't have the time to get used to the job in a quieter, more relaxed atmosphere. From day one, he has got to go into this very tough and emotional, as it probably will be, election campaign. Which wouldn't make his life very easy. But I think that this is a challenge. And, you know, someone said today, how can a former journalist can become a prime minister? I am a former journalist myself. And I became a prime minister, and I took decisions on the most crucial and sensitive issues of the security of the state of Israel. And I think that those decisions were ultimately and were appreciated as good decisions. So I have no doubt that the background of Lapid doesn't disqualify him to take the tough decisions needed in this job. And I mean, this argument that people sometimes voice that if someone doesn't have a military background, how can he be in charge of the country? I've seen all the generals, and I tell you something, very few of them were smart enough in taking decisions on political and civil issues. They are greatest generals, but they are not better from other civilians when it comes down to political matters and issues that involves the running of the country as a whole.
Now, you spoke about the change in Israel over the past year. In 4 months' time, Israelis go to the polls again. An election that could return Benjamin Netanyahu to office. Some predict it will. Let me just ask you, what do you see at stake for Israel in the upcoming election?
Well, I think that this is a major issue. The major issue is not the personality of Netanyahu, but the threat that he and the gang that runs with him pose to the nature, to the fundamental principles that have characterized the nature of the State of Israel from its proclamation. Democracy, the superiority of the Supreme Court of law, the integrity of the law-abiding agencies, the police and the others. All this is threatened by the possible return of Netanyahu, and therefore it is good for the country that Netanyahu will remain outside, and my personal prediction is that he will remain outside in these coming elections, in the fifth round of elections coming November 2022. And after these elections, when he will not have the necessary votes to form his own cabinet, he will be kicked out.
All right. Well, by the Likud, you mean by the party?
By his own, by his own party. By his own party. Yes, that they will just get, sick and tired of running again and again and again without winning.
All right. Former Prime Minister of Israel Ehud Olmert, thank you for joining us on i24.
Thank you very much.